The Galactic Council Chamber had never been designed for children. Its vaulted ceilings stretched toward infinity, carved from obsidian that drank light and gave back only cold reflection. The 7 High Arbiters sat elevated on their crescent dais, their crystalline forms refracting the chamber's pale luminescence into fractured rainbows across the floor. Below them, in the defendant's circle, stood Ira, small, defiant, and entirely human. She wore no formal robes, no ceremonial adornments, just the worn jumpsuit she'd been wearing when the enforcers had taken Kiko and Luma from her quarters 3 cycles ago. Her hands, calloused from years of engineering work on the frontier stations, were clenched at her sides. Human Aera, Arbiter Velshara's voice echoed like wind through crystal caves. You stand accused of unauthorized guardianship of 2 Lixian cubs. The Preservation Council has deemed your species unsuitable for such responsibility. Aera's jaw tightened. She'd heard the whispers for months. Humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be trusted with the care of other species young, especially after the war had ended only 5 years prior. The cubs were orphaned, Aera said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Their entire colony was destroyed by the stellar collapse. I was the only one who— You overstepped your authority, Arbiter Krento interrupted, his segmented carapace clicking with irritation. Lixian protocols demand that orphan cubs be surrendered to official rehabilitation centers, not claimed by scavengers. The word hung in the air like poison. Aera took a breath. I didn't claim them. They chose me. Children do not choose, Velshara said coldly. They imprint. You exploited their trauma. Before Aera could respond, the chamber doors groaned open. Every head turned. Even the arbiters leaned forward in their seats. 2 small figures padded into the council chamber, their silver-furred bodies catching the light like moondust. Kiko, the elder at barely 4 solar cycles, walked with the careful dignity of someone trying to look brave. Luma, 2 cycles younger, clutched something against her chest, her large amber eyes scanning the massive room with wonder and fear. Behind them walked the court attendant, a thin Vrelian whose antenna drooped with obvious discomfort. High Arbiters, the cubs insisted on being present. They refused to remain in the holding chamber. This is highly irregular, Krento began, but Kiko was already moving. The cub walked straight to Aera, ignoring the arbiters entirely, and pressed her small furry head against Aera's leg. The human's hand instinctively dropped to stroke between Kiko's ears, the gesture so natural it seemed to predate thought itself. Cubs, Velshara said, her tone softer but still formal. You understand why we are here? We are determining your future care. Your proper care. Luma's ears flattened. She looked up at Aera, then back at the arbiters, then did something no one expected. She opened her arms and spilled her treasures onto the polished floor. A cascade of objects clattered across the obsidian, a broken circuit board soldered into the shape of a star. A fabric doll with mismatched button eyes. A small wooden carving of what might have been a ship or perhaps a bird. A braided bracelet made from wire and colored thread. A smooth riverstone painted with 2 moons. Kiko joined her sister, carefully placing her own collection beside Luma's. A datapad loaded with children's stories in 3 languages. A worn blanket that smelled of engine grease and lavender. A hand-drawn star chart with constellation lines connecting dots in impossible patterns. A music box that played a lullaby from old Earth. The chamber fell silent. These, Kiko said, her voice small but clear in the vast space, are our playthings. Aera made them. Everyone. Luma nodded vigorously, picking up the fabric doll. She makes them from broken things, from trash, from pieces nobody wants anymore. The cub's eyes glistened. Like us. Arbiter Velshara's crystalline form seemed to dim. The council can provide you with proper toys. Educational materials designed by— We don't want proper toys, Kiko interrupted, and several arbiters gasped at the breach of protocol. We want our toys. The ones that smell like home. The ones with stories. She held up the wooden carving. This was made from a beam in the station's old hydroponics bay. Aera said it grew food for 100 families before the collapse. Now it reminds us that broken things can still be beautiful. Luma grabbed the star chart, thrusting it toward the dais. And this, Aera taught us how stars die and are born again. She said that's what happened to us. We died when we lost our colony, but we were born again when she found us. Aera's eyes burned. She hadn't known they understood. Hadn't known they'd been listening during those long nights when she'd tried to explain the universe in ways that made loss seem bearable. Arbiter Krento shifted uncomfortably. The human has clearly influenced your perceptions. This is precisely why. She tells us the truth, Kiko said fiercely. The rehabilitation centers lie. They say our parents are at peace among the stars. Aera told us they're dead. She cried with us. She didn't hide. She teaches us to fix things, Luma added, holding up the circuit board star. She says humans believe anything can be repaired if you care enough. Even hearts. The silence that followed was different now. Heavier, more thoughtful. Arbiter Velshara descended from the dais, her movements slow and deliberate. She knelt, a gesture shocking in its humility, and examined the treasures scattered across the floor. Her crystalline fingers brushed across the painted stone, the braided bracelet, the music box. These are not the gifts of someone exploiting trauma, she said quietly. These are the gifts of someone transmuting it. She looked up at Aera, and for the first time, the human saw something other than judgment in those refracted eyes. Humans, Velshara said slowly, lost their homeworld once, did they not? Before the Great Exodus? Aera nodded, not trusting her voice. And you rebuilt. Across 1,000 colonies, 1,000 stations, from wreckage and loss and sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. The Arbiter stood. Perhaps that is not violence. Perhaps that is the rarest form of strength. Krento began to protest, but Velshara raised a hand. The council will recess for deliberation. But let the record show that the evidence presented by Kiko and Luma speaks more eloquently than any testimony we might hear. She looked at the cubs, then at Aera. Love, it seems, can be demonstrated by playthings made from broken things. As the arbiters filed out, Kiko and Luma rushed to Aera, burying themselves in her arms. She held them tightly, breathing in the scent of their fur, feeling the rapid beat of their hearts against her chest. Did we do good? Luma whispered. Aera kissed the top of her head. You did perfect. Outside the chamber, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, dying, being born, transforming darkness into light. And in a corner of the galaxy, among the wreckage of what had been lost, 3 survivors held each other and dared to hope that broken things could indeed become whole again. That perhaps love itself was the greatest recycling of all.